off. Hello, my name is Brad Bodnerchuk, and welcome to the Half a Dozen Hospitality Podcast, where we discuss everything hospitality, from the food on the plate to the teams that make it happen and the community that drives this industry forward. On this podcast, we sit down and chat with some of the most exciting, inspiring, and innovative minds that make up one of the most dynamic industries that there is today. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by none other than Caroline and Cynthia from the Greater Vancouver Food Bank. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've been leading the show off for the last, I'd say, couple episodes with this question, only because it gives me an idea to better understand you both outside of what you do for a living. And I'm always hyper intrigued by people's daily routines. So walk us through how you started your day today, and if the way you started your day today is how you start every day. Do you have a morning routine? If so, what is it? Cynthia, we'll start with you.
Okay. Yes, I have a morning routine, and it's very animal related.
Okay.
So animals come first. Dog gets walked. Everybody gets fed, fresh water. Once they're taken care of, then I head into the personal hygiene mode,
Right.
which is at least another hour.
Okay, cool. Caroline, how about yourself? How does your day start?
Geez, I wake up before the rest of my household and take usually about half an hour to stretch, feed the cat, have half an hour to myself before the world starts waking up. And then I'll usually dig into a pot of oats that are made the night before.
Oh, the overnight oats.
The overnight oats, yes.
Very
the steel
popular.
cut oats with a little bit of chia.
Yeah.
Because I realized that I need to be the person who lays out her clothes and makes her breakfast the night before.
Yeah.
Because I'm turning into that person. So, yeah. And then my 8-year-old wakes up and my husband gets out of bed. And then we start the day with the team.
Cool. And you come here, which is on Raymer Street here in beautiful Vancouver. And we had some sun shining today, which was gorgeous. I want to say thank you both for having me into your space today. I'm a firm believer, and I say it on the show ad nauseum, I'm a firm believer that the most valuable thing that we all have is time. So thank you so much for giving yours to the show today. I truly appreciate it. I wanted to quickly, not really tell a story, but just give you both my emotions felt when I walked through the doors today, and the same emotions I had when I walked through the doors of the Salvation Army last week when I visited them, and the same, almost same emotions I had yesterday sitting down with the team from Growing Chefs as well. And I'm generally very much a glass half full, rose-colored glasses guy, but there's something about the reality and the necessity for something like the food bank to exist or the Salvation Army to exist that it challenges me at times. So not to just get right into the nitty gritty, but are either of you challenged by the realities that we face as a society, both globally and locally, that there are such demands on a place like the food bank here locally? And if so, how do you exercise those emotions and feelings and not necessarily get over them, but still get your jobs done? I don't know who wants to field that one first.
Oh, I can take a shot at it. I think, yes, definitely. It's spiritually and mentally, it's a bit depressing when you realize why you're here. And ultimately, we'd love to not be here. And we see, I think particularly right now, we see the membership growing. But with everything we see and hear in the city, it's not a surprise. So we've seen about a 30% jump in our membership in our locations in Vancouver in the last several months. So for me, I try to kind of channel it two ways. One is we need to tell our story better, because I think there's a lot more community giving out there than we've experienced. And we've experienced a lot, but I think there's a lot more. People want to know the impact of their giving and how it is that people come to use the food bank, because there are many, many different stories and timeframes that people need our help. And then just given where I'm situated by the front of the food bank, people can come here once a year for food and once a week to our other locations. So, if I have the chance to chat with somebody at the door or outside on the steps or talk to their dog or just any little personal moment with them, I try to take that.
And how does that affect you? Does that make you feel better about what you do? Do you walk away from that feeling more concerned with the reality, or like what do you walk away from those interactions feeling?
I definitely feel better. I mean, in the last several years here, there's been a big focus on increase in dignity and respect for the people who use the food bank. The way we structure our locations, we try to make it more of a shopping experience. So for me, it's just we're all people and our backgrounds are all varied. And so it's just the chance to connect with someone, make eye contact, ask about their pet, chat with their child, anything like that. That's just takes away all the surroundings and you're just people for a moment.
Right. Kind of relieves all those stigmas that you may have involved.
Yeah.
Caroline, how about for yourself? Without a question, how does it resonate with you? Like, how are you affected by the reality of this existing globally, but also locally here, and obviously impacting you 5 days a week, or if not more?
I think that food is a human right, and whether people are able to not access it out in the community for various reasons, whether it's not enough income or they're new Canadians and they're adjusting to life in Canada, being able to come through the doors here. I mean, I view food as a gateway. So being able to access and talk to people through food as a medium and help, again, the new Canadians integrate and understand Canadian society and food, and also learning from them about their food cultures. And that's kind of the thing that gives me hope is two things, I guess. It's learning from all at our food hubs, particularly that Cynthia mentioned, where it's a shopping experience. We have 13 food hubs throughout the city, throughout our catchment area, which is the North Shore, New West, Vancouver, and Burnaby. And so throughout there's 13 food hubs, and each one represents a very different demographic. And so I've had the pleasure of going to not all of them, but a few of them. And our South Van food hub has such a strong community of South Asian individuals who are so excited to tell you about the food from their country. So even though they're at the food bank, which to some, the first visit can be loaded with a little bit of shame. I think our goal there is to, like Cynthia had mentioned, bring a bit of dignity to this situation and try and figure out what they can give us as much as we can give them. And then I think also within our warehouse here and our head office, we have lots of volunteers that come and go, and seeing those people come in to do warehouse sorts. So they come in and learn about how food coming in needs to be sorted. Some of it needs to be discarded. So we're learning some statistics around how much it costs to discard food that people donate to us that we can't use, and just educating the public around that via them working in the warehouse in a food sort situation. So we've got a lot of corporate community engagement there. So people just get excited about being able to participate and give back, and that sort of excitement of being here and feeling their excitement around being able to be part of their community is, I don't know, it gives me energy when I'm feeling a bit bummed out.
Good. Can you help myself understand, for both of you and listeners as well, how did you both come to be here today? And explain to myself and listeners again, like what it is you do here locally for the Greater Vancouver Food Bank. We'll start with you, Cynthia.
Sure. So as the Chief Development Officer, I am responsible for fundraising and communications.
Okay.
And for me, it was a chance to work right within the community. I was working for a large company previously across 5 provinces with a lot of travel in a good industry around mental health and supporting mental health. So that has always been important to me. So I was able to still connect a great cause, but be a little closer to home. And for me, I think I thought, I can bring some business skills and hopefully help the operation run more smoothly or efficiently, and then really look at the fundraising piece and how can we blow that up and make it bigger.
How's that been for you so far?
So far, it's been, certainly a good, strong learning curve. And yes, there are definitely things we can do here to make it more efficient and sustainable. I think the mindset of let's run it like a business, because in many ways it is. To me, making the most efficient use of the donors' dollars is really important. Serving our members best is kind of number one. Running a really efficient operation and using the donors' money as efficiently as we can, squeezing every penny out of it is really important. So we're still coming across things that we'd like to change, but it's been good, and I see tons of opportunity.
That's great. For yourself, Caroline, how did this come to be your reality, and what is your background?
I have a varied background. My background is in food. So I used to cooperate and own a restaurant here in Vancouver. And food security issues is also of interest to me. I studied anthropology and moved into television production. So storytelling and food are basically my sort of background, and being here feels like a natural fit for that. And I, like Cynthia, really want to help tell the stories of the individuals and our individual donors, our individual volunteers, our individual members, and try and help the public understand what it is we do. I think a lot of people see the food bank, which I personally think needs a rebrand, as a warehouse where food comes in and food goes out. But there's so many hands that touch that food, and so many lives that are affected by the food that comes in and out, and where it comes from, and the industry that donates, and the food donations, and our unique place in the food system. So I've been here for 6 months, maybe just a little bit more, and just feel like I'm getting a handle on what the food bank's role is and the potential for what the food bank can be moving forward by really just helping raise awareness for all the myriad services and partner agencies that we work with, and different communities. Yeah.
Can we change speeds a bit and talk a bit about misconceptions? I know for myself, my exposure to hearing of the food bank, it generally coincides with a certain time of year. And then other than that, it's kind of radio silence. So obviously that time of year for me that I'm hearing most of it, whether it's on traditional media or on new social media, is around Christmas time. But as an educated member of the society, I understand that people are needing assistance 12 months of the year. So aside from the misconception of people just need help at Christmas, is there any other misconceptions that you have to deal with as a stigma associated with the food bank currently that you wish to kind of help dispel? Or is that really the only one, that people just think one time a year people need help?
Well, I think you're right. And I think it's worth building on that one a little bit, in that ironically, the time of highest need is the summer, really, because kids are home from school, and all the great school meal programs and snack programs and weekend backpack programs that we have aren't running. So to me, that's on us to both communicate, but also to have some different events. We can educate the public better by having a higher profile in the spring and summer. So that's on our to-do list. I think other misconceptions are, I'll sort of clean out the cupboard, and because whatever it is that we have, they'll be able to use. And we actually have best before date issues to think about, and they're quite reasonable. Within, a year to 2 years, a lot of food that is non-perishable is safe to eat and still nutritious. But we have worked a lot on food quality here as well. So as part of the dignity approach, we really aim to give out quality, nutritious food. So we hand out between at least 4 fresh items for each person each time they visit, and often more in terms of fruits and vegetables. We do milk once a month. We do eggs once a month. And so that nutritional quality, if you're looking at something that's super high sugar or super high fat, and it's old on top of that, it's not going to be a dignified experience for somebody to sort of sort through a bunch of food like that. And it's also not what what we want to share. I think we have a ways to go too on educating people around the fact that the people who use food banks have many more health issues than you or I do. So illnesses in general, or certain conditions, and then chronic conditions. And a lot of them stemming from, it's been a hard life and they haven't had regular access to healthy food, and they've had to live in many different scenarios and situations. So all the more reason for us to have a supply of healthy food they can rely on that will help in some way to moderate and regulate whatever health condition they might be trying to manage.
Did you want to add to that, Kelly?
I guess just to highlight again the misconception that the food bank is just a food in, food out organization, and that we have so many programs that we're offering here, from the community food hubs, which Cynthia alluded to being set up like a market with a shopping experience, to recipe sharing, to canning workshops, to train the trainer workshops so people can run community kitchens. And also that people accessing the food bank we're finding more and more are working individuals and families who just can't make ends meet. And the food bank allows them to, maybe have cable, or, can allow them to put, it's about a 2 to 3 day supplement is what the weekly supplement is. And it allowed them to just kind of allocate that funds to somewhere else, especially in a city like Vancouver, where, we had some members in advance of the CBC annual Christmas Food Bank Day.
Right.
We had some members in doing some interviews with a producer to promo the event, and the stories of the individuals sitting around that table. I've talked with members, I've listened to their stories, but having 12 people in a room together, from new Canadians to people that are on disability, who are only allowed to work a certain amount of hours a week, and the food bank is their lifeblood. One woman who was fantastic, she was knitting as we were talking in this environment. She was probably in her mid-20s, and she was on disability, and she said all the right things. She's like, I batch cook, I buy dried beans, I do all the right things, but I just can't make ends meet. And without the food bank, it's, a part of her community. So she looks forward to seeing those individuals every week, and she volunteers, she's a volunteer member, which many of our members also volunteer. But yeah, I think that's a misconception that people are, poor and just simply can't afford food because they're not working or they're on welfare. It's like there's a lot of individuals that are working and just trying to keep it together. So,
can you help articulate what the member experience, or like the user experience, looks like? So when I was downstairs waiting to be checked in, I was witnessing for the first time in my entire life, which I'm kind of ashamed to say, but watching someone come and gather their food. So feel free to interject here, but the way I understood it happening was the member would step to the desk, they would give them their member card, then their information is checked on the computer to verify, I'm assuming, who it is and how often they've been here. And then essentially your volunteer or your staff member is filling bags full of, like you were saying, Cynthia, once a month, eggs and milk, etc., and then fresh produce as well. And then he or she is on her way. Is that as simple as it is? And obviously it looks different in the hubs as well, but what else is that user experience like? And can you articulate that to myself and the listeners?
What you witnessed here is at our headquarters at HQ. So members can come here once a year to get what we call sort of a emergency or annual grocery bag. And so whoever's checking them in would a person could also come here to register. So they need to provide a piece of ID and address. But beyond that, this is just a once a year come to the food bank and get your emergency food bag. Other than that, we encourage people to go to their food hub in their community, where it is that shopping model, and collect their food from that spot. And that's 3 weeks out of the month. 1 week out of the month is check week, so that's a week that's off.
Right.
But yeah, coming here, just that the food that they're receiving is similar to what they would receive at a food hub for sure. So my question was,
the
food hub is is again that choice model. So, I want a can of beans, but I have no idea what to do with a bag of pasta. I can go and get, my fresh produce there. As Cynthia mentioned, we have eggs, once a month there, and milk, and then 3 or 4 fresh produce items. But it's not, this coming here isn't really representative at the headquarters of what we do for the most part, which is really encouraging people to be in their community and that accessibility of being able to access your community. So if you're living downtown, you're going to, Christchurch Cathedral. If you're in South Van, you're going to the South Van Neighborhood House. So within those community food hubs the goal is to offer extra other resources as well. So for example, at the Christchurch Cathedral, there'll be a Vancouver public librarian representative there signing people up for, library memberships. And he'll have, it happens to be a male librarian, he'll have books on the table that people can take. And he's just sort of there to introduce the services of the Vancouver Public Library. We'll have nurses from Vancouver Coastal Health. So each hub has, it's again, like I said, it's kind of that gateway of food being the gateway. And then sort of once people are in that community, it's about engaging, whether they want to come to a community kitchen or access a library card or, talk to a nurse about potentially having diabetes, whatever it might be. So we can't really provide those services here.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And the neighborhood houses are great about having daycare while they do a resume session for new Canadians,
cool.
for example. We're having an open house on Saturday. This is what we're focusing on. Are you looking for work? So that's why they've been a great location, and we've moved out of some locations into neighborhood houses just for that reason. That's
awesome. I'm looking across the table and I see a very colorful pamphlet that says the top 10 most needed items. I personally, not that like a shameless plug, but I'm very intrigued to know what those are and why not segue and to fill our listeners in on what those are that the food bank needs the most and people need the most.
Sure. Currently, this is a fancy new card that we just designed, so we're quite excited about that. Thank you very much.
I like it. It looks beautiful.
But the reason why we made this very attractive card is to provide to people doing food drives, to kind of be a guide, to help people donate the stuff we need. And on the list are things like brown rice, barley oats, whole wheat pasta, canned vegetables, canned fruit. Monetary donations are gratefully accepted is a new item on our most needed items. In that we have 3-to-1 buying power. So for every $1 you donate to the food bank, we can buy $3 worth of food.
Wow.
Based on relationships with farmers, producers, wholesalers, our grocery partners. And we also don't have to sort the food out that gets donated to us. So we really have been hitting home. And I think the message is getting there that that money is the most efficient thing you can give to us. And we can get a lot more. And we can also buy what we need. And so we're talking about, ideas around single item food drives. So if you're doing a food drive, you can just do all black beans, and everybody at your office can just bring cans of black beans.
That's cool.
Or, in that, cans of fish or whatever. So we work with a lot of schools to do food drives. And as Cynthia mentioned before, and I've been guilty of it, and I keep reminding myself every time I kind of go, why did you donate that crappy thing? People go to the back of the cupboards last minute. You've got this notice that there's going to be a food drive at your kid's school, and you don't have anything, and the notice came in yesterday and you don't have time to go to the grocery store. Well, these grape leaves will be great for that person at the food bank.
Right.
Or, this can of sardines or whatever it is that you don't really want.
Right.
We probably don't want it either.
Yeah.
So it's, it's not around shaming people, but it is around, just think for setting people up for success, to donate things that we need. And, people, sometimes we get feedback, if it's good enough for me, it should be good enough for you.
Right.
Some people don't like the top 10 list. And when it's kind of explained that, our food bank base has a higher, as Cynthia had mentioned, instance of chronic disease, it's crucial that we have a higher quality food. So our top 10 list: natural peanut butter, and then canned hearty stews or chilies, which are just like open up that can and put it in a pot, because not everybody has a full kitchen to cook in. So yeah, we're really, really, on social media, when somebody says we're doing a food drive, I'm like, and there's our list of things we really need. And I feel like we're trying to measure food quality of food items coming in from food drives. It's kind of a new thing that we're looking at, and potentially grading a food drive.
Oh,
you got 4 carrots out of 5, or to kind of help the competition maybe amongst schools, or So it's we haven't started doing that yet, but I really think we're a bit too polite. Oh, thanks for everything you give us. Wow, we'll take whatever you've got. And I think we need to start getting just a little bit more choosy and a little bit, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but
I want to say rigid, but not rigid.
Not rigid, but just
defined.
Clear. Let's be clear rather than just sort of taking whatever you get. Because at the end of the day, we have to pay to get rid of the thing
that you don't
that's
want.
The dented can or the expired whatever. I think we came up with a number of $30,000 a year to have. So this would be the pipeline. Your food would come in from your food drive. A volunteer sort group would come, and they would sort out the stuff from the food drive into cans of soup, cans of fish, peanut butter, and then the items that we can't use, which are dented, expired, ripped, sugary drinks, that kind of thing. Then, so the people have taken the time to sort it out. Then the stuff that goes into the D-Pack gets shipped by our drivers to the D-Pack facility, which is about half an hour drive away. We pay to have it dumped. The driver comes back, and then we go from there. So it's we started looking at how much does it cost us to. So we're getting a bit more clear about
that little card should help. And shameless plug, but I think it's rightfully done. You mentioned monetary donations. So we are partnering with the dinner series that we're executing, myself and my team locally here. So the June dinner, which will be held at Fieldhouse Brewing out in Abbotsford, all the proceeds will be going here to the food bank. So my hopes are, I know we'll sell the dinner out, but my hopes that we can cut you guys a big fat check at the end of it. But to that point, how often do you have people donating and then asking questions like you mentioned earlier, Cynthia, about like donors wondering like where their dollars go? Say for example, big picture, I come to you guys in June with let's just say a big goal, a $10,000 check. What does that do for the food bank? Where do those dollars go? How are they spent? I know Caroline just mentioned it's a 3-to-1, which is amazing. So 10 turns into 30, which is incredible. So how does that impact what you're doing here at the food bank? And can you articulate that?
Well, we take in about 60% of our overall revenues between October and December. So the money we bring in isn't just about providing food at that time of year. We really have to stretch it, and it really helps us fill the warehouse shelves for sure. I find that as soon as you start talking to people about some member stories, the type of food we provide, the difference that makes to people, they're just delighted. Some of them really want to direct it. So we do have some programs, and so they might say, I'd like this to go to your Kids Picks program, or I would like this to go to just simply your healthy food purchase program, or to eggs. But most of the time, people are happy with a general donation. We explain how much we can stretch their money, all of the locations, how it works. And I mean, I had a gentleman who we had thanked because he's a monthly donor at a healthy level. And I just phoned to thank him and wondered if he wanted to come in and see our facility and see what we can do, as Caroline was saying, with money versus this whole process that food has to travel through from when it comes in to when it goes out the door. And I'm always curious why people give as well. So I try to share about the food bank, but ask, why is this important to you? And he told me his story of growing up with many siblings and a lot of food insecurity. And the next day, he emailed and said he was upping his monthly donation.
Amazing.
By a lot. And the next week, he called me and said, "Are you in?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Okay, I just want to come by." And he just walked in and put a $10,000 check on my desk.
Hey, we like people like that.
So, it was just a moment of appreciation for a donor, and it connected him with what we do, but also it connected him to the reason why he gives. And it was really powerful. It was totally the highlight of my season.
Yeah,
100%.
I bet. Viscerally, what is your reaction to something like that? Like, how does that make you feel? Like, I always say, to the marrow of your bones. Like, how do you react? Are you jumping up and giving this anonymous person a hug? Are you, like, when he leaves your office, are you like jumping up in the air and punching the sky and saying, "Hell yeah"? Like, how do you?
Cynthia's not a hugger.
No?
But I did give him a hug.
Oh, okay. Good to know, because after every podcast, I usually hug my guests. So maybe I'll just hug Caroline.
I was so taken aback, and I just think the look on my face and the body language. I was stunned that he gave that much. And he said, "I just think from the sounds of things, you can put it to use." And people's generosity that way just amazes me, and it is such a great feeling. And then you have to tell people. So I had to go around the office and tell everybody this amazing guy, and I told my friends, and so it's a good news story like that is so inspiring. So for me, hugely inspiring in the work that I do here.
A message that I heard just the other day when I sat down with, and I'll give them a plug as well if we can, the team over at Growing Chefs. They have a system where, similar to what you guys have, I'm sure, where if I say I wanted to donate on a regular basis, like a monthly basis, we could set that up. They have the same thing as any denomination from $1 to $10,000. What are you seeing? Not to get too personal, but is there a level that you're seeing people get? Is it $20? Is it $50? What is the consistent in that group, or is there consistency? And what do you attribute that to? Is it just the education piece, those conversations that we have, like tying it to your coffee for a month? Like, what works to the call to action for people to get involved in one of those like monthly debited donations to you guys?
We were just talking about that today, actually. Probably between $15 and $20 a month is the average across the monthly donations. And we love our monthly donors, and we wish more and more people. So each year we have some campaigns to do two things. One, see if people who do give to us throughout the year would consider being a monthly donor, just because it's great from a budgeting standpoint.
Oh, for sure.
Us.
More clarity.
And then we do ask people who are giving monthly if maybe they could give a little bit more. Totally understand if they can't. But I've been in that situation where maybe I've started at 20 and I've upped it to 25 or 30, and I don't really feel it, but over time it makes a difference. And if we can do that with a few hundred people, then it really does make a difference.
Yeah. If you're listening and you have a Starbucks addiction, try and exercise it for a month or 2 or 6 or 12 and find someone, find a charity like the Vancouver Food Bank and take that money and put it to good use. Because I had no idea personally, and I'm glad that we're here today to discuss it. I had no idea the buying power of 3 to 1. Like, that is substantial. And I know, having visited the Salvation Army, they work with the food bank like integrally. So when you give money here, it affects so many other organizations as well, not just the food bank.
We work with about 80 community agencies.
Yeah, amazing.
And giving them food weekly, monthly for their community kitchens and snack programs and youth after school programs.
Yeah, I preach it often, not necessarily on the mic, but off the mic. And I'm not a very holy man, but I'm a big believer in the law of reciprocity. I don't know if you know that one, but the idea is, if I have a glass of water and you have none, I give you that water without the intention of getting anything back. But then what happens somehow, some way down the road, I start receiving things in my life. So not preaching to you both, but preaching to you guys listening, that even if it is just, if you don't think you have it to give, I challenge you to just give $5 to someone like the food bank and just watch what happens to your life as well. Because I really do feel like that gentleman that came in and cut that check, I would argue that he took a lot from that as well. He probably left here, part of me feeling, part of me really, really, really good. And I know myself, even being here today and giving a platform for you both to tell your story. And then, like I said, being associated in June with the dinner and giving you guys the proceeds from that, I take a lot from that as well. Like, it makes me feel really good about the efforts that I'm putting in to bring attention to this. Mm-hmm. Do you guys take a lot from what you do? Like, do you leave work? I know at the start we started talking about like kind of the potential negatives of the realities of this, but when you lay your head at night in your bed, do you feel good about what you're doing? Are you happy with where you're at and the changes you're facilitating with your efforts?
I sure do.
Yeah, I do. But I it's a constant, we can be doing more. It's that dissatisfaction of,
no, for sure.
There's so many things we could be doing. So, just trying to focus the efforts, celebrate the successes. Mm-hmm. And I mean, circling back to one of your first questions around, is there any hope when we come in, at the beginning of the day? I think Cynthia articulated through that donor story, like that's energizing for at least a week. It's like those little doses of good news stories and the interaction with the pet of the member, or those interactions really kind of give you little jolts of energy to keep going. But I feel like there's just so much more we can be doing as a society and an organization, but we're making our darn best effort. So I sleep pretty well at night most of the time.
Can we talk about some of those gaps then that you feel like? Do anything on top of your head that obviously we are making great strides in moving forward just with conversations like this being had? But is there anything else top of mind that you think we should flag as far as gaps in the system that socially we should be paying more attention to?
Going back to sort of the right, food is a human right.
Yeah.
I think, we can't not wade into sort of anti-poverty and issues around people needing enough money to buy food, period, end of story. We're not the last resort, but we shouldn't be here. The food bank, our food bank's been around since 1982, and it was, as everybody knows, all the food banks set up across the country. It was a temporary measure. So I do feel, there's a place for advocacy from where we are, and helping at least supply data and numbers to organizations so they can also advocate for themselves as well. Cynthia spoke to the 80 partner agencies we work with. We have the ability to really provide them with really robust data and work within the community with different organizations to help facilitate a little bit of advocacy. But I think there's a lot of work to be done around access to food in our country, and especially in the northern communities, and globally. But don't want to get too heavy.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Speaking about globally, how much time do you spend with each other or with other colleagues discussing what is going on globally with other organizations like the food bank? Do you ever take like field trips, if you will, and go and look at how are they running their operation? What works? What doesn't work? Is this type of organization siloed, or are the walls knocked down and everyone's discussing what works, what doesn't work, whether it's in Vancouver or Copenhagen or New York? How does it work in your community?
That's a great question. We have been here under a year, both of us, and some of the leadership as well. So that is on our sort of immediately in front of us to-do list, and a number of us have started. It was a bit heads down in the beginning, especially with the Christmas season, but we are aware that we don't need to reinvent the wheel, and there are a number of things that we'd like to improve and fix, and there are some great things happening out there. So I am connected to a national group of food banks through Food Banks Canada. And so that's a good conduit for finding out what others do in given scenarios or how they handle something. But I think we aren't where we need to be, connected locally into the scene. And in terms of globally, not where we need to be either. But there were some things we wanted to take care of initially. Now let's look at what's happening across the country and best practices. We do, through information or articles, we certainly see whether it's an American food bank or Caroline just circulated something from a Danish food bank. So there are pieces that are coming in globally, but there's so much to learn.
Yeah. Do you want to add to that, Caroline?
No, you covered it. Yeah.
I saw a stat at an event the other night, and it's a very typical stat that I see when describing essentially the cliche, like the rich get richer. And as you're telling the story about this gentleman coming in, not to keep mentioning it, but I think it is such a powerful story, gentleman coming in and cutting a check for $10,000, already giving on the regular to the food bank. How do you guys feel about when you see those stats of like the world's elite remain elite, and there's such a discrepancy between the elite and the non-elite, if you will, for lack of a better term, yet you have people like this gentleman coming in, and if he wasn't doing what he was doing, arguably, professionally, or however he is making his money, he wouldn't be afforded the ability to come in and facilitate change like that. So are you challenged at all by when you see stats like that, either worldwide or here in Canada, of like the top 10 richest people and how far they are from the rest, quote unquote, the rest of us? Or do you see that stat and think there's more to the story, because those people could very well be giving a lot of what they have to charities like this, and if they weren't doing that, they wouldn't be able to do those things? So I think of people in the world like the billionaires, his name escapes you right now, Bill Gates, for example, like agreeing to giving a certain percentage of all of his net worth to a charitable cause, like things like that. So when you see stats that are so polarizing, are you witness to the other side of it, like this gentleman coming in? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I think we're very used to that in Vancouver, because it is such a city of extremes, and living in BC, I think we see a lot of that. And I think that I mentioned it earlier, there's a lot more potential for giving out there, I think, for the Greater Vancouver Food Bank. And I don't think we have the profile that we need, and we're not the household name that we should be, because we do want all of those families and people who are fortunate and have made an amazing living or inherited a whole bunch of money to keep us in their minds and hearts, and the other charities of Vancouver as well. And I think, I guess I always try and turn it into what can we do? And so I tend to try and go there. And whether it's individuals or corporations who make a lot of money, we don't get, and because we haven't asked for a lot of corporate matching. So employees will do a virtual food drive online or an actual food drive, but we need to ask the companies to match their employees' donation. That goes a long way. If your employees are taking the time to do this, it obviously means something to them. So there's an opportunity for a corporation. I'm seeing so many community giving positions in corporations. It is important out there. So let's get on the radar and get them to support the community that they're working in. And we've seen some amazing stories of companies doing just that, but I think there's a lot more out there.
Oh, for sure,
could be done.
Do you feel like, and I don't want to put words in either of your mouths, but do you feel like to date the food bank has been, I know, Caroline, you said polite earlier, I believe, but has it been too passive? And now it's time to get, like you say, act like a business, because it is a business, and be a little bit more aggressive. Have those conversations with those corporations. Ask those people to go from 20 to 30 or 20 to 25. Like, is that the mindset right now of the food bank? Do you want for the community locally to understand, like, you are serious about what you're doing and you're going to go after it aggressively? Is that a message, or can you articulate it a little bit more appropriately? I just kind of butchered it there, but
no, we want to meet everyone where they're at. So we want to meet our members where they're at in the community. We also want to meet the business community where they're at. So speaking the language of the individuals that we would like to donate to the organization. So I think a certain level of efficiency speaks to a business knowing that their donation is going to be used properly to the most of its, ability and potential. I like what Cynthia said about the potential. We're not tapping into the potential of the business community, and I think we need to be clearer and firmer. And I
don't think we've asked a whole lot.
No.
I think we have been very politely, kind of on the sidelines. And I think it's amazing what happens when you do ask. And we aim to be very transparent with really impactful stories about what happens when you give and the difference you can make. So that will go along with it.
Yeah, the way you guys just, sorry, you want to
No, I was just thinking, I mean, one thing we've been chatting a little bit about lately is, our donor base, individual donors particularly, are older individuals, older adults, and we're really looking to try and communicate with the millennials and younger and try to figure out what the best way to help them donate and become donors
for the rest of their lives.
So when their tech startup, we had a great group called Startups Care who are a bunch of tech startups that did a competition. How much did they raise?
$44,000
over Christmas.
Huge jump, more than double what they brought in last year.
And these are, hungry, nimble, tech startups that are just like it gave me so much hope, and they were such nice folks. And their social media was so robust and allowed us to share their stories in a way that was great. So, that's hopeful, and that's potential as well, is really working with and encouraging that community before it becomes the wealthy billionaires who may or may not donate. It's about sort of growing our donors from the high school food drive straight through to when you make your millions on your tech companies. So.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's even more important because we hear and you read that charities are going to lose about 30% of their donor base. With the seniors, because a lot of seniors, as Caroline said, are the ones that give. But there isn't the expectation that's going to be replaced by their kids and their grandchildren because they don't have the money, or if they are inheriting money, they're using it for housing or for schooling and those kinds of things. So all the more important to tune in and for people to give what they can and what they're able to at a young age, because we may not have as many people who come in and put that $10,000 check on the desk because there just may not be that many of them.
Well, if you're out there and you've got it,
all those donations count, though. The $5, the $1.
Oh, they do.
We're not expecting people to throw down.
Well, that was what was interesting about this Christmas season. We certainly have individuals and a lot of companies that donate a large amount, but we had a continuous stream of very reasonable sized donations, under 1,000 even, and a number in the sort of 1,000 to 2,000 that are annual gifts from people. But it really does add up because we had a huge December, so every little bit.
How huge? Like record huge? Are we able to share?
Yes. So we our target was about 2.2 million for the month, and we came in at 2.6.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing!
Which is great. And we had not been meeting target prior to that, so we really needed to hit it for December.
Yeah.
But coupled with the fact that our numbers are increasing as well.
That's right. So the donations need to go up.
You have some numbers in front of you there, Cynthia. I actually wanted to, if I could better understand, how many people are using the food bank. Do you have stats on that? Like how many people from our city are using and relying on the food bank?
So we operate in New Westminster, Burnaby, North Van, West Van, and Vancouver. And so we, for a long time, saw about 6,000 people a week in our 13 locations. And then it spiked in the summer and it hasn't gone down, and we're up to about 8,000 a week now, which is a big jump, a third. Yeah. So, and then through the agencies, and that's a harder number to track just given their setup, but around 20,000 people access the food that we supply to those 80 community agencies each week.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So 28,000 on average currently a week. Yeah.
Wow. Is there any data or stats? Is it just like trying to find a needle in a haystack, trying to figure out why the jump? Why did we go from 6 to 8?
I mean, we don't ask a lot of questions, but we take demographic data. So we're seeing a few more kids, but quite a few more seniors. So we've gone from about 22% seniors to about 35% seniors at the moment, and some more employment. So that means working seniors as well. On average, about 2/3 of people who use food banks are working. So, and we're seeing we're seeing that increase as well. So, it just seems harder and harder to make ends meet.
Right. Is there, speaking of that, of different users and it kind of changing a bit the demographic, is there ever, not to ask us like a downing question, but is there ever any abuse of the system? And if so, what does that look like? And can someone abuse the system?
It depends on, I think, how the screening that you do, and that really varies across the Lower Mainland and across the country. But a lot of food banks have either a low barrier or a no barrier system where you ask very few questions. So if you have a system like that, then there will inherently be some people who potentially use it who might not need it or might not fit the criteria you think you should have. But if you have, we have volunteer teams in all of these locations. They know the members. They have relationships. We do track average use, and I'm waiting for an update on that. But we have said historically people use the food bank for about 8 months at a time.
Okay. And
then we have the groups of people who are on disability, for example, where there's no light at the end of the tunnel. We know we're going to see them on an ongoing basis. But I think on the whole, there's very little abuse of the system. And I don't think that people would line up as much as we try to have groups and times for people to come. There are inevitably lineups. I just don't think people would do that very often if they didn't need to.
Good. If there is someone listening right now and for a while they've been struggling to put food on the table or food in their shelves, and maybe they're struggling a bit with either ego or pride, who is the food bank for? And when should someone feel comfortable coming into the food bank? What does their reality have to look like in your minds? Or is it literally anyone that just feels like they need help?
Anyone that feels like they need help. It's a self-identification of need. So yeah, if you feel like you need help, and whether it's a one-time go or maybe 2 or 3 to get you through some rough patches. I've talked to people who said, I come once or twice a year when I just really need to, make ends meet. If we provide, like Cynthia had mentioned, as most dignified environment as we possibly can. And, in talking to a member who actually was on cross-country checkup, I guess about a month ago, when they were talking about the food prices rising, and she was very articulate in speaking about her first experience and hearing about it through a friend who said, trust me, once you get there, you'll meet such nice people. You can volunteer if you want, and there's that feeling of giving back to your community. And then a lot of people go from being a member to getting back up on their feet and then volunteering and participating and then becoming donors. Right. So yeah, I think anybody who self-identifies as needing it at that moment is pretty much our member.
You read that there are so many more people who are food insecure in Canada than who use food banks. Yeah. And sometimes that's having to really skimp on quantity or quality, or simply just you can't afford food. And so for families, I always like it when I hear them say, we're just going to stop at the store and then we're going to go somewhere else. And so it's, you want to be able to protect that pride in parenting and for you to feel good. We want people to feel good about what they take home and put on the table or put in their kids' lunchbox. And if it means coming to the food bank for you to be able to do that, then you should do that.
Yeah. I don't know why. Every once in a while, during the last 53 minutes and 45 seconds of having this conversation, I almost want to cry a little bit, because of the reality. And I noticed downstairs there were diapers as well. I noticed at Salvation Army they had tons of diapers. I have a 7-month-old daughter, and it's just it's getting me a bit emotional now. It's sad to me that it is a reality for a lot of people that they have to seek help to put diapers on their babies. So kudos to you guys for taking the time to come on this podcast and spread your story, put together cool pamphlets like that to help educate the public, because this is so important. And as a society, we need to do whatever we can to alleviate this stress on these families, because there is that discrepancy between the rich and the poor. And I think it inevitably, it may always exist, but it doesn't have to be as dramatic as it is. So thank you again for allowing me to get a little emotional for a second, but for sharing all the stories, because I think it's so important to articulate what the food bank is and why it exists. Changing things a little bit, this show is called the Half a Dozen Hospitality Podcast. So I have for you both, Caroline and Cynthia, I'm going to put you on the spot here a bit, but I think you guys can do it as a team. The half a dozen have twos. So stay with me here. I need 6 items, so 3 each, of something you experienced in your lives that you feel like our listeners have to experience. You can go off the board. It doesn't have to be related to what we're talking about today at all. Just giving myself and listeners a better idea of who you are and what you do. So whether it can be a restaurant you've been to, a trip you've taken, a book you've read, an album you listened to, a piece of art you've stared at. 3 things from each of you. You can go back and forth here of your have tos. So 3 items each you feel like our listeners have to do. Who wants to start?
So many ideas racing through my head.
Yeah.
What's appropriate?
I could start.
Go.
I would say you have to have a pet, because I think relationships with animals are incredibly rewarding. They teach you patience, and animals will trust you or they will not. You have to earn it.
Yeah.
I think you have to get outside with an animal if possible. But
Okay.
there's a interesting research out there about what happens to kids when they spend an hour out in the woods each day. It's great for their brains, and it gets them away from technology. So to me, being outside is very, very therapeutic.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think you have to go experience the arts, and whether that's concerts, music concerts, whatever your thing, whether it's art galleries or whatever, but that gets you just out of your head, out of your day-to-day. It appeals to your creative side, and it's a really important part of life and making you happy, I think.
That was amazing. For the first time in about 65 episodes, you're the first person that hasn't basically looked at me and said, I don't want to do this. Or people usually have 1 and then they just go blank. Cynthia just did 3 in about 35 seconds.
She's good. She's good.
And I didn't prompt her. She didn't have notes. That was completely improv, and she did fantastic. No pressure,
Great.
Caroline.
I'm just going with the things that came into my mind first.
As you should.
First thing I thought was skinny dipping in a glacial river.
Oh, okay. Are you speaking? Okay.
No, swimming in cold water, cold water that's very uncomfortable. I believe that you never regret it. You never regret jumping into freezing cold water. Do a polar bear swim once in your life if you're physically able. If not,
that reminds me.
Medical help.
That reminds me of a quote Ralph Waldo Emerson said: "People wish to be settled, but only so much as they are unsettled is there any hope for them." So I just picture how unsettling that can be in the freezing cold water, in the nude or not.
It doesn't have to be in the nude.
Right.
But that's what first came into my head.
I like that.
There you go.
Run with it.
I was young.
Yeah.
The second thing that came into my head, and Cynthia's going to make a face, but eating a sea urchin straight from the ocean. Yes. Yes.
Are you not a seafood person? You don't like hugging or seafood?
I don't know. Maybe you do.
I'm not that much of a seafood person.
Right. Yeah, fresh uni is pretty awesome.
And I think I'm not prefacing it with have to, because I don't believe you have to really do anything. It's your choice.
Yeah.
But singing with a group of people. So whether it be in a choir or with like caroling or whatever your musical fancy is, at a bluegrass hoedown, just raising your voice with a group of people, I think is something that everyone should have to do. Yeah. Once that to me is incredibly therapeutic and something
just feels
that
good.
Feels good. Yeah.
The last one I have for you then is the half a dozen haven't yet. So kind of a bucket list, if you will. So share with myself and listeners 3 items each. Cynthia, if you're feeling confident again, you can go 3 back to back, or we can go back and forth. But I feel like you'll be able to feel this in your sleep. So
Okay. I haven't ridden in a helicopter, which I'd really like to do.
Very cool.
I haven't been to the East Coast.
Oh, no?
Which I really want to do.
We should do a little tour back east with some Blue Nosers.
Yes.
We'll tour you around.
Yes.
Could she keep up? I think you could keep up, actually.
Yeah. I don't know if I could keep up.
I don't think I could keep up either. That's why I'm here in Vancouver now.
Yeah, exactly.
And I haven't adopted a senior pet, and I really, really want to be in a position to be able to do that.
How many pets do you have, I have to ask?
At the moment, only 2, but we moved from Ontario to BC with 6 cats and 2 dogs, and we'd also been fostering cats, which partially led to the number of 6.
I feel like you should have a hobby farm. No?
I rode horses as a kid as well, so the animal connection's pretty fierce for me.
Yeah, if you guys have a hobby farm, you're needing a farmhand, hit up Cynthia. She'll come move in for a year. Caroline, for yourself?
Oh, challenging. The have-nots bucket list. Jeez.
You know what? It's interesting asking this question with such a varying demographic that have been on the show. I'll drop a name if I can. Trevor Bird has been on the show, and I asked him the same question. He said, I don't have any, which I thought was so cool.
Wow.
He felt like he was at a point in his life where he was okay. Like he didn't need to experience anything else. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that kind of how you feel, or there's still things on your list like, no, I got to do some stuff?
I've done a lot of stuff that I really wanted to do. I haven't. Helicopter's one of mine, actually. So, yeah, I'm open to many different experiences. I've done a lot of traveling. I've eaten a lot of weird stuff. I've, owned pets. I've ridden horses unsuccessfully. I do like to try to do things.
Was the unsuccessful horse ride how you ended up in the freezing cold water? No?
No.
Oh, okay. I had to ask.
It's been about 3. But anyway, I got back on the horse a couple of times. And
Good.
It just wasn't my thing. Yeah, I'm having a hard time with that one.
That's okay.
Not to say that I, done it all, but I'm drawing a blank right now.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's all travel based. Places I want to visit.
Yeah, for a lot of people it is as well. I want to take a moment before I let you both go to again say thank you so much. One, I've never shed a tear on this podcast before, so that was a first. Thank you for that. Hopefully it wasn't too awkward for you guys to watch, but it was a message that again, I use the word viscerally a lot to describe things. Like it viscerally affected me both today, realizing the reality of why this place exists, similar to why the Salvation Army exists and Growing Chefs, et cetera, et cetera. But focusing on what you guys are doing here today, I want to take a moment to say thank you so much. You arguably could be doing so many different other things with your skills and your background, but the fact that you're giving your time and energy to the food bank on behalf of the local community, thank you so much for choosing to do that. And thank you for coming on the show today. I feel like this platform and others like it would be a great place for the food bank to populate, to help tell the story and communicate with a whole different demographic that maybe either hasn't engaged with the food bank for a long, long time or hasn't ever engaged with the food bank. So again, kudos to you guys for thinking outside the box and entertaining coming on this podcast. And lastly, again, I am super excited to be associated with the food bank with our dinner happening in June at Fieldhouse Brewing. Look for the press release for that one coming up in a few weeks after this is released, and then visit my personal website, www.bradbodnerchuk.com for tickets to that, and proceeds to that dinner will go directly to Caroline and Cynthia and their team here to affect some positive change locally with food and those people that cannot afford it. So get involved. Before I officially let you go, if people want to reach out and they want to engage, whether they want to, we didn't really touch on volunteering. I think that's such a huge piece as well. So we talked about the donations, which is big, but if people want to volunteer their time or just to get engaged and learn more about what the food bank is all about, how best do they do that? Is it the website? Is it calling in? Is it Instagram, Twitter? How do they do that?
We're open to being reached on all platforms.
Okay.
The website's a good start.
Place.
Yeah. Which is what, sorry?
www.foodbank.bc.ca.
Okay, cool.
And there's information about donating and volunteering on there for sure. And we are on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook as well.
Amazing.
Van Food Bank.
And LinkedIn. Very cool.
And LinkedIn.
All the platforms. Not to put you both on the spots, but is there anything you want to share before we sign off officially? Anything else you wanted to communicate to the listeners before we say bye-bye?
I think that your emotional reaction is what happens, right? That's the reason why I think a lot of people give. And the more we can tell the story, I think it will reach people, because it does reach us. There would be some parallel that we can draw, and you think, wow, what if that was me?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. We're not too far away from that. And I think we're all ignorant to think that we are. So consider those people that are coming into food bank around you and near you, just like you, because they really truly are. They just have had a few misfortunes and some bad luck here and there. So whether it's your time you're giving or your monetary dollars and cents, please do consider the food bank moving forward 12 months of the year, and especially during the summer when they need it more so than not. That is it, guys. I will leave you to enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for tuning in as you do week after week. I truly appreciate and love you all. You know what to do. Until next time, be good and do good. That's it. We did it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done.